Welcome to the BCEN and Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCEN certification holders, and industry professionals. Our goal is to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always worth your time.
In this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN friend, Harriet Hawkins. From pediatric pearls to powerful life lessons, Harriet brings a depth of wisdom shaped by her rich nursing journey. Her passion for life and learning shines through every moment, making this conversation as inspiring as it is informative. Trust us, you'll be hoping for a part 2 before it's even over. This episode is called "The Secret is to Adjust Your Sails."
I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCEN and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, Director of Professional Development at BCEN. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Holly.
It's great to have you with us. And in this episode of BCEN and Friends, we have Harriet Hawkins. I'm going to apologize in advance for my continual starstruck status, as Harriet is not only famous in my world, but throughout the world of nursing. Her contributions to the profession are extraordinary, but it's her genuine kindness and character that have earned her the friendship and respect of so many. I count it a true treasure to share time with her. Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCEN friend, Harriet?
Yeah, absolutely. Harriet Hawkins is a nurse whose remarkable career in healthcare spans over 5 decades. Harriet began her journey in psychiatry in 1969 before moving into adult critical care and emergency medicine. In 1982, she joined Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago, now Lurie Children's Hospital, where she worked in the NICU and played a key role in launching the Neonatal Pediatric Critical Care Transport Team in 1985. Harriet also founded the hospital's resuscitation program in 2001, expanding education and life-saving certifications such as ACLS, BLS, PALS, NRP, and more. Beyond her clinical work, Harriet is deeply committed to community outreach and philanthropic service. She's been volunteering at her local homeless shelter since 1996, running a weekly clinic, and has participated in 28 humanitarian mission trips across 9 countries. She remains actively involved in the Emergency Nurses Association at both the state and national levels. Somewhere in between all of that, she takes time to breathe. Harriet, welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for that nice introduction.
Absolutely. Well, we are really excited to have you with us. You are very highly regarded in the field of emergency medicine, and you've done so many wonderful things, both in emergency medicine and all of the work that you do with volunteering. And I know we're going to jump into some of that, but before we do, can you just tell us a little bit more about why you chose a healthcare field and really why you have this passion for pediatric care?
Well, I never did candy striping, which is interesting. They had that option, but I always just wanted to be a nurse. I read all those Cherry Ames books. I don't know if you know those or not, but I read all those Cherry Ames books. And I just really, it was either going to be a nurse or a teacher. And I got into high school and there was a future nurses club and we had a nurse at the high school. And yes, she wore a white dress and a cap. And I got active in the future nurses club and it was from there. The children's part, I started out in psych and I worked first in a psych intensive care unit. And then I worked with the adolescents at this private psychiatric hospital. And I really liked working with the children a lot. But then I went to adult intensive care and the children's thing just sort of fell into me. I had an opportunity to go as an agency nurse to Children's Memorial Hospital and I fell in love my first day and I just stayed and the children thing just grew on me.
And how did they convince you to start the pediatric transport program with that kind of a background as well?
Well, I had been working there for 3 years when one of the other nurses had gotten the idea to start the transport team. We were doing transports from the NICU on our own. We had our own little program, and this nurse was the head of that. And all the other kids that came into the hospital, like to the pediatric intensive care unit, came just by an ALS ambulance. And we were seeing that a lot of those children were coming in not in the best shape. So she had the idea to start the transport team. And I had been doing transports since I started working there. And so I signed up to be part of the original group, and there were 6 of us that started the team. And that was 40 years ago.
Wow, that's awesome.
Let's just say that nurses in general, I feel like when they see a problem, they're like, I bet you there's some way we could help to fix that. And I think that story just signifies to me the heart of nursing, that we see that our patients are having this issue, or maybe we see multiple patients having the same issue, and we go, gosh, there's got to be a better way. And, we put a couple of our heads together, brain work on it. And before you know it, we come up with a plan. I'm not always saying it's the best plan. I've definitely made some plans before. And then I was like, well, that didn't work out quite like we planned. But then, we go back through that improvement process, right? And I think it's just so natural for nurses to have that ability and almost like an innate sense to want to course correct when you see something is not quite right, or hey, like we can improve this. And I love that. I'm so glad that you care about children. I feel like children and maybe even like pregnant people, they kind of like split the divide in nursing. It's like you either love kids and you love taking care of them, or you don't. Same thing with like our pregnant patients, is like you either love it or you don't. But I think just looking at your career and honestly looking at your list of credentials, you hold a lot of certifications in pediatric specialty. You have your CCRN, so your critical care. You played a key role in developing this resuscitation program. Again, it offers ACLS, BLS, PALS, NRP, stable, ENPC, TNCC. That's a lot of classes. It's a lot of education. And honestly, just looking at this body of work that you're doing, it's very clear that you believe specialty training and continuing education is a very big deal. So what has driven your commitment to continuously learn throughout your career? And then I also just kind of want to know, like, how does that impact the people that you mentor and the people that you train? Like, how do you pass that on?
Well, I think the learning part, I've changed specialties a lot. And that's one of the great things about nursing. Nobody ever said to me, what's wrong with you? How come you went to, I went to adult coronary intensive care unit, and nobody said, what's wrong with you? You had psych. Why are you coming here? Nobody said that. What people say is, wow, you bring such great experience. And then I went to the ED, and I was on a flow team that did the ED and the critical care units at a hospital. And again, everybody said, oh my gosh, you have such great experience. Then I went to agency nursing for 2 years, and it was mostly adults. And one of my agency jobs, we kept getting children in the surgical intensive care unit, and that was really scary. So I said, I think I need to get some peds experience. And that's one of the things that led me to go to children's, again, initially through the agency. But they put me in the NICU, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had never seen a neonate. So this is in 1982. And in 69, when I graduated, they didn't really have NICUs. So I'd never seen any of these small babies, and I knew absolutely nothing. And that's what made me feel like I have to learn. And every time I changed, I would go out of my books. We didn't have, I know younger listeners won't realize this, but we didn't have internet then. I couldn't go to Google and look up anything. So I had like shelves full of books, and I would go out and buy books. So I bought books about CCU, and I went to EKG classes. And then when I switched to the NICU, I'm buying all these books on congenital anomalies and all these cardiac defect books, because I didn't know anything about that. And so I think that recognizing that I had to learn so much, and also that things are constantly changing. When I talk to the new grads at work now, I tell them things like, there's so much we didn't know. And I wish I would be around to see what they will learn in their career, because research, right, is always changing. And things that we used to do when I started as a nurse, we know now are not good, and in fact might have been harmful, but we didn't know then. And so it's not just the equipment. I mean, I remember the glass chest tube bottles on the floor, taped to the floor, and people were like, what? Yep, that was it. But it's not just that, it's all the other things that we do and things that we learn. And even if you've just been a nurse for 10 years, there's probably protocols that have changed, because we learned that there's a better way to do it. Not necessarily that what we were doing was bad, although sometimes we know that too, but we know that there's better ways to do it. So I think that for myself, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly going to conferences, and there's now it's all online. I'll admit I don't buy as many books as I used to. I buy books to read. I like to read out of a book, but I don't buy as many books for about nursing as I used to because I can go online and find things. So.
Well, I think it's valuable to have that passion and that drive to seek out the information, though. And I think that, to me, that's the key, whether it's online or whether it's in a textbook. A lot of nurses I've worked with, and I'm sure you as well, when they get a situation or a child that they've never cared for, they run from it, and then they never take the time to feel better the next time. And for me, I always told myself, it's okay to be uncomfortable one time, but next time you're going to do your research, you're going to do your homework, and you're going to be better prepared so that next time this same situation happens, I'll be more comfortable. And it sounds like you had a very similar passion in your career as well. And I think that that's valuable for all nurses to have, to never, to be okay with being uncomfortable, but also to never want to live in that realm, but to get better at what they do. And I think another thing that is interesting about you and the work that you do is that you work so much outside of the walls of the hospital as well. And you've spoken many times about the work that you do on medical missions, but you also work there in Chicago with a local homeless population. And so how did you get so involved in that? I think people have an interest in it, but sometimes they, number one, say, well, I don't have the time, or number two, I don't have the money. How did you get really involved in both of those aspects, and how do you stay so committed to it over these years?
Well, in 1996, in the fall, my husband and my son and I joined a local church. And at the beginning of the sort of church year in September, they always have here's how to get involved in church thing. And one of the women, who is also a nurse, had a big sign about housing, it was called PADS then, which stood for Public Access to Deliver Shelter. And there was a big sign about the local PADS program. And one of the things volunteer options was to work on the Monday night at the clinic. So I said, sure, why not? And I signed up for that. I figured one night a week would be, and initially it was like one night a month. Now it's one night a week. And I thought that would be good. And that's how I got involved. I stayed involved because I found it fascinating. And I think that people have different biases about who the homeless are. And I will admit I did as well. And what I learned is that any one of us could be homeless. Many of us are just a couple of paychecks away from being homeless, potentially, if disaster strikes. And I learned that not all homeless people are substance abusers, and not all of them are mentally ill, and that many of those that are unhoused are people just like you and I. And they just hit upon bad times. And I found that I really liked them. I liked talking to people. And sometimes, even now, that our clients come into clinic not because they're sick, but they want to sit and talk to somebody. Like sometimes, like I've got 3 more people I need to see. You really need to have you go soon. But they really wanted to sit and talk to somebody that will give them undivided attention. And if you're living on the street, that's something nobody does. People don't even have eye contact with you, let alone talk to you. So I just found that I really like our population. And I've gotten involved with another organization locally that works with the homeless that are living on the street. And it's very rewarding. Now I do every Monday night. There's one other nurse and I that just do it every Monday night. And our clinic has changed. The Monday night clinics are people that are in a shelter that are actually housed. So they have a room and electricity and heat and air conditioning and running water and food. So their medical needs are not as great as they are when you're living on the street, because they have all these things. But they need health histories, and they need blood pressure checks, and they need a lot of health education. And so that's a lot of what we do now. And then I help with getting supplies for a couple of groups that work with the people that are actually on the street. So it's a fascinating group of people, and I'm not afraid of them. I think a lot of people are afraid. A couple of times I've had people in the car with me on a night that my husband and I are dropping off supplies to the group that works at one of our train stations here, one of our L stations here. And my friends didn't want to get out of the car. And I think that's because they were afraid. And I've learned not to be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of.
I think some of the fear may also come from a lot of the representation out there related to the drug issues across America. Could you just maybe, I don't want to go down the wrong path with this, but could you just maybe speak to that aspect of it? Because there is a crisis of opioids and things right now. And how do you personally deal with some of that?
Yeah, there is a huge crisis with opioids, and we certainly have our share of drug abusers in our shelter. The rules at our shelter are that they're not to use any illegal substances in the shelter, although we don't even like them to smoke marijuana in the shelter either. That's a little harder now that it's legal. But our clients need to be, if they're on heroin or have been on heroin, they need to be on a methadone maintenance program. And so we track that pretty closely to make sure that they're going daily to their clinic visits. But it is a huge crisis. And a lot of people turn to it when they have nothing else. And I think that's part of it. A lot of the work we do with the homeless is counseling, and not that I'm a therapist by any means, but just talking to them and helping them understand things that they can do to change their lives and not be so dependent on drugs. But it's certainly something that people fall into. And yeah, the crisis is huge. But I would say that of our clients that are in our shelter, probably only about 20% are substance abusers, and the rest are either just down on their luck, and some of them deal with mental illness, which is really hard.
And I think the key in all of this is, even though you said you're not a therapist, I think nurses, just because we tend to be the ones who listen, I think that's a huge aspect of nursing, and that makes people trust the nursing profession and nurses so well. But it really all goes back to that idea that a lot of times when we meet people, we just see the culmination of the decisions that got them to where they are. We don't see the story behind how they got to where they are now. And I think that you pointed out that before you started doing this work, you kind of went with what you heard or maybe what you saw, or limited interactions. But once you kind of got in and started doing the work and meeting the people, you found their stories fascinating and also super relatable. I have sat with people who are going through a really, really hard time and heard, well, I made this choice and I made this decision, and then this came up, so I had to make this other decision. And you begin to realize, wow, when faced with a similar crisis, when faced with a similar circumstance, I probably would have chose this. I mean, sometimes you're like, I wouldn't have chose that, but truthfully, you begin to see just how relatable some of these instances are, and some of these paths that get people to a place where they don't want to be. But again, I see the culmination of all those decisions that got them there. I don't always see the incremental steps that it took to get them to that place. And when you break it down that way, you said it perfectly in saying that all of us are just a few decisions, a few paychecks, a few bad things coming up from being in a place where, like, hey, I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need somebody to step in. I'm going to need some support. And I don't know, to me, that it just helps to clarify the way that I look at people, and helps me to maybe approach it with more curiosity versus judgment. And I found that in nursing, that when you're curious about people, when you ask questions and try to get them to talk things out, it opens up this, like, hey, I'm not standing here pointing a finger at you. I'm actually trying to give you a hand to hold, and maybe help you get some information, education. It just opens up those doors. So again, very inspiring. I love that you kind of took us through your start to where you are now. And yeah, I'll be honest, Harriet, with all the work you do in your facility, community, professional organization, a lot of people listening to this podcast are really going to wonder, like, how you manage it all. And then let's just throw on top of that you have a passion for international humanitarian efforts. You've participated in 28 humanitarian missions across 9 different countries. I mean, we could probably spend the next hour just talking about lessons that you've learned along the way from when you started doing this to now. But I guess if you can kind of just maybe give us a few of those top lessons. And then there are a lot of nurses and a lot of people in healthcare, when I talk to them and we get on the subject of humanitarian missions and that kind of thing, everyone seems interested, but it's always like, what is that next step? Or perhaps you have just some advice that you would say, like, hey, you're interested. Here's my best piece of advice to you.
Well, I think the best piece of advice is to find a good group with whom to work. And that's important. And that takes a little bit of vetting, of talking to other people that have gone with the group before you go with the group. And if you contact a group and they don't want you to talk to anybody, then you don't want to go with that group. Seriously. The other main thing that I've learned is that there are many ways to do things, and that doesn't make your way wrong. It just makes it different. And again, there are times when what you're doing may be harmful to someone, and I can try to educate you on that and show you a better way to do it. But when we do humanitarian work, we don't need to walk in and approach it as though I'm right and you're wrong. We're not the big saviors walking in when we go someplace. Unfortunately, people often think that the other countries. So I do a lot of teaching in other countries, and I can go in to teach and have a local instructor with me, and people want to hear what I have to say because I'm this person from the United States. And so therefore I must be better. And I really, really don't like that. And as much as possible, I try to encourage, when I have local instructors, encourage the local instructors to do as much of the teaching, and I'm there to validate what they're doing. Now, sometimes they're introducing something totally new, and that's a whole different story, but it's fascinating. I have gone back to El Salvador quite a few times, many times, helping get some programs started. And I still go, not right now, but I still go periodically to, again, validate what they're doing, because my friends there who are running the programs there don't have anybody to tell them how good they're doing. All they hear is do more, do more, do more. So I love it that I can go in and say, you are doing an amazing job. So I think it's, you need to do humanitarian work with an open mind, and there's different kinds. I do a lot of education, but I've also done clinics and surgery, and I don't do surgery, but worked there on surgical mission. And it's all fascinating. You meet amazing people. And what I learn is how lucky we are, and how entitled we are. I think one of the hardest things about doing a humanitarian mission is coming home. And I teach at my hospital. I don't do clinical anymore. I'm part-time. I'm retired, and I work just per diem. And I teach. And I walk into class at 8:00, and people say, "Are we going to get a chance to go to Starbucks? Can we have a break?" And I'm like, seriously? And that's the kind of stuff that we in this country deal with all the time. And you go to another class and they'll go all day without a break because they're so happy to be there and hungry for the education. So that the hardest part is the reentry. The hardest part of a mission is the reentry day. But I love doing it, and it's an amazing thing, and opens up your eyes to a whole new world. And I get to make lots of friends too, and eat good food.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of perspective shift. That it definitely must be difficult to come back to seeing some of those things. I've been in other countries as well, and I've experienced a very similar concept of just coming back home and thinking, why do I ever complain about anything?
Yeah. I was on a surgical mission, and people complain about. Now, I was doing post-op care, so I was seeing these women after surgery and caring for them for 12 hours, and people complain about having like 2 or 3 patients. Well, I had 6. That's the norm, right? I had 6, so it was fine. It was no big deal. I had an interpreter to help me, but we're so spoiled here about how many patients we have, if we're doing patient care, or do we get our breaks or not. It's just so different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned making friends all over, and obviously the impact that you've had around the world and across the United States has been pretty large. But we always like to ask this question on the podcast, and I am fortunate enough to be the one to get to ask it to you, is there somebody that has impacted you as an individual, or any particular moment that you look back at your career and go, that really changed who I was, or that really changed the way I delivered care, or my perspective. We just talked about the humanitarian missions, but is there anything else in particular that you feel has really changed you as a person?
There's actually a couple of people. I was working at a job and I was this is the old days, an assistant head nurse position in ICU. And it was not going well. I'm not a good manager in that sense. And so I quit and I needed a job and I quit. It was not under the best circumstances. I got upset and I just quit. So I didn't have a job and I called this agency the next day. I quit on a Friday and I called this agency on Monday and I talked to the owner of the agency and I said, I told her exactly what happened. And I said, I just, couldn't deal with it anymore. And I just quit. She goes, well, I believe in giving people a second chance. And she hired me that day. I'm like, over the phone, like, you're amazing. So that was pretty wonderful that we've all probably been in positions that were just like, I can't deal with this. And I should have given notice like 2 weeks and I just didn't. And that was like bad. So I went to the children's after that and I went to the NICU. And I worked there for 12 hours on the NICU and I fell in love. I literally fell in love. And so I said to the woman who was the head nurse or the director, I guess, that I really like it. Do you need help? Can I come back tomorrow? And she said, yes. And so I went back for 3 days and I said to her, I really like it here. And she said, well, we need help for the summer. And I said, I would love to work here for the summer if I could be trained to the ventilators. The 3 days I've been working in the NICU in what's called a feeder grower room. So they were the step down patients. So she said, sure. So I had a 2-week orientation, got trained in the vents and started taking care of all the sickest kids. And at the end of my orientation, end of my summer, she came to me on a Friday and said, we'd like to hire you. Do you want a job? And she hired me. So my contract ended on Friday and on Monday I started as staff. And on that same day, she let me start doing transports. So I thought, wow, this is like the faith that these two women had in me was amazing. And I really appreciated that. And the third person is a patient's mother. I was doing transports and we just started our transport team. And I went to pick up one of the sickest children I'd ever picked up. And he was about an hour and 15-minute drive away. And he was just a babe and a toddler. And I had wanted one of the physicians to go with me because I was afraid this kid was going to stroke out on me and had leukemia, a really bad case of ALL. And the doctor didn't want to go. And I'm like, oh, great. So I went by myself and the mom was obviously hysterical. And I said, you know what, you can ride with me in the ambulance. And she had been told all along by the nurses at that hospital that she would not be able to ride and was so grateful to me. And that's when I realized, I think, finally, the importance of family presence. I mean, we do it all the time and we had done it all the time, but the importance of communicating with the family and letting them know that you're there for them and listening to them because she didn't want to let her kid go without her. And I didn't want to take him without her. And I let her ride in the back with me and he did fine, thank goodness. And we're still friends. So, and he's a young adult now.
What a great group of moments or people. I mean, really and honestly, it was the moments, but then it was the people. And I always love hearing the responses to this question because, again, it just reminds me that there are sometimes just these moments that happen. And in that moment, it doesn't seem as significant. But then as time passes on, you realize that, wow, that really did impact me. That really did change the way that I think about something or the way that I see somebody or the way that I, move forward in my career and the way that I practice, the way that I'm kind to another human. It's one of those reflective moments that I think it's important to take time to think about those things and to realize that there are probably hundreds of moments when you've done the same for someone else, when you've interacted with someone and it may not have seemed significant to you, but it was for that person. And so again, I love that question. I could listen to people talk about it because again, it just causes me to pause and reflect and also to kind of think about the future and realize like there are many more moments that will probably be coming up. And I hope that I do the same for someone else as they're doing for me. So thank you for that. I get the chance to ask a few rapid fire questions, and they're really so we can just get to know you a little bit better. Okay, Harriet. If you could have done anything else, or maybe even still, because again, you keep a full schedule, but like if there was something else you wanted to try or do, what would it be?
I probably would have been teaching elementary education. I always thought that's the other part I thought I would do would be a teacher. And I actually did teach third grade Sunday school for 11 years and fell in love with the kids. That age group is really challenging. They are much smarter than we give them credit for and ask incredible questions. So I thought I would go into elementary ed if I didn't do nursing.
Oh, you would have, I think you would have been everyone's favorite teacher. I think they would have all like been like, you know what? We're not moving on. We're just going to stay in third grade forever. And honestly, I mean, hey, I probably would have tried at least to stay for one more year, be held back. I've been like, I would like to be held back.
It was a lot of fun. I found the artistic side of me, which I don't feel like I'm very artistic, but with eight-year-olds, you have to do crafts. And so that was quite the challenge, but it was so much fun.
I will admit to you. So my kid she's in third grade currently as of this podcast, and she's very creative, as I feel like kids are, in that they don't generally judge themselves as harshly as we do. I mean, like, it's not like she's out there Moneting it up or anything, but she's, drawing and coloring and doing these things. And she's like, Mommy, can you draw this? Mommy, can. And so I do. And in my mind, I'm like, this is terrible. And she's like, oh my gosh, it's so good. How did you do that so well? And I'm just like, well, let me train you. Try, like, it's absolutely hysterical how that age group, how kids can just inspire you to be creative when you don't really feel like you're super creative. But it's amazing when you get around kids because they just like, wow, you drew that so well. Can you show me how? And I don't know, something about that just makes you
They're not,
feel like, I'll give it a try.
they're not nearly as judgmental as we are. That's it.
Oh,
You're the same way. I look at my drawing and think, oh my God, it's awful. And they're thinking, they don't care. They're not as judgmental. And just like they're not judgmental about their stick figures that they draw, they think they're great. And you know what? They are great.
they are. They're so good. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, and this is why I like to hang out with kids sometimes. They do. They make you feel better about your very small efforts. They have a lot of wonder. And
Mhm.
I think that's something we as adults we should latch on to even more. Okay, we could stay on this topic, but I want to find out about some of your favorites. So, do
Okay.
you have a favorite book or maybe a quote that really motivates you?
So my favorite book is The Secret Garden. I love that book and I love the movie too, but I love that book. I read that as a child and I've read it over and over and over and I love it, love it. Um, and my favorite quote is the Margaret Mead quote about never doubt what a small number of thoughtful, committed people can do to change the world. That's the only thing that ever has. And I love that quote. Mm.
The Secret Garden is a very good book. I will also say that the movie was very well, they've done more than one, I think, but
Yeah.
I think they have. But good for them because I hope it inspires people to read the book. But I love that quote, and it is so, so true when you think about things that have really caused shifts in like cultures and civilizations and impact for good. It usually started off with one or two people getting together and going, we can do better. And before you know it, after a lot of hard work and effort, and usually a cost to those people, they do. And it's changed that 50 years from now, people are like, oh, well, we've always done it this way. And then it's like, no, no, no. It took some really awesome people deciding to put in the work to make change happen. And yeah. So great quote. All right. Do you have a favorite movie, TV show, or if you're one of those people who likes to binge watch a show, we're always looking for the next one. So any recommendations for us, Harriet?
So I'm not a huge TV watcher. I like movies, but I'm not a huge TV watcher. But I will tell you my favorite movie, don't laugh, is South Pacific with Mitzi Gaynor. Really old movie. Have you seen it? It's very good. I love the music. I love the movie. I love sort of the underlying theme of the movie. It's not the happiest ending for everybody in it, but there's a little happy ending. But I love the movie and what it says to us about prejudice, which is not probably what it was intended to do, but the underlying themes of some prejudice there against people that don't look like us. And I love that part of the movie, but I love the music.
Mm, I know. Look, get me a good like musical. And even now, like sometimes there are some movies that my dad really likes some of like the old films. And so growing up, if it wasn't a Western on, it was going to be something where people would dance around, jump around. There would be a song or two or three at least. And I don't know, something about that. And we look at it through the lens of today. But I think sometimes when you think about when it was made and what they were trying to say in a way that produced change, I agree with you that sometimes when we look at it, we're like, oh, they could have done this. And it's like, well, let's think about what time they were at and how the envelope has been pushed so far since then, and just appreciate it for what it is. I like a good
I just can't watch
classic.
musicals around my husband though, because I sing. He doesn't really like them to start with. And I can't help it. I love them. I have to sit there and sing along. But yeah, I like old movies.
Yeah, me too. There's something very peaceful about them. Oh, okay. Favorite musical artist or a song that like motivates you, gets you going.
So I really love folk music. And my very first live concert, my very first album, all right, I'm old. The record, 33 and a third, a record, record. So I guess it was a Peter Paul and Mary record. And my very first live concert was a Peter Paul and Mary concert in downtown Chicago when I was in high school. And my parents actually let me come into the city with my boyfriend to see the concert. Yeah, that was like a huge thing. The coming to the city was a big part, but then a live concert was great. And don't laugh, but I still have that big program from the concert. Yeah, I do.
Oh, that is awesome.
I know exactly where it is too. I love Peter Paul and Mary, but I like Phil Oakes. He's another folk musician. He died quite a while, many years ago, but he wrote a lot of really, really good thought-provoking songs. And the one I find myself singing a lot is one called There But for Fortune. And it's a great song. If you haven't heard it, Google There But for Fortune by Phil Oakes. There's great words. Lots of other people have covered it as well. But I listen to lots and lots of folk music. And it's what I do when I need to wind down.
Music, I don't know, physically it makes sense, but I feel like everyone's ear is tuned to what makes them happy. Sometimes when I hear a song, I'm like, oh, it's okay. And then someone else is like, man, that's my favorite song. Every time I hear it, it just, oh man. And I'm like, oh, okay. I obviously don't hear it in the same way you do, and that's okay, which is what I love about music. There's so many different genres of music and takes on a different thing and so I don't have to love it all, but I do know that there is someone out there who that song is probably their favorite.
Right.
So I mean, again, it's kind of like when I tell my kid is I'm like, look, you don't have to love every food group. You can just say that's not my favorite. It's not the one I would choose. Same thing with kind of music. There may be some that I like more than others, but I certainly love to hear what other people enjoy because sometimes I find that, yeah, I actually really like that too. So I wrote that down. I'm definitely going to Google that later. So,
All right.
all right. My last question for you, Harriet, is in between all the things that you're doing, do you have any hobbies or a self-care go-to or something that helps you reset?
Well, I listen to music a lot. So and I'm not an electronic music person. I have CDs up the wazoo. And so I like to help the musicians that way too. And I listen to a lot of maybe not as well known musicians, a lot of local musicians, more in the folk music genre. And we have a sailboat. My husband and I have a sailboat. So from like the end of May through the end of September, I'm pretty much busy sailing. We raced our boat for 37 years or so. And our son races it now. I don't race anymore. I have arthritis and I'm not that fast moving about the boat anymore or that strong. So I don't race much. I do a couple of races, but I'm on the race committee. So I go out on the power boat and help get that race started and help making sure people are following the rules. So I do race committee usually at least one day a week, if not 2 days a week. during the summertime from the end of May through the end of September. And that for me is racing is very stressful. Sailboat racing and even sailing can be very stressful because of weather, and racing can be very stressful. But for me, I find it relaxing. I totally love doing it. And in the wintertime, I just listen to music, ski sometimes, not much anymore. But I like to listen to music, and I also love to read. So I read a lot of books. That calms me down.
I will agree with you on the reading part, the music part. And I will say that I like to be on a boat. Please do not ever ask me to help with anything on the boat. If you were like, it's at the aft and the C word and all of the, like, I would just be like, I will be helpful, but you will probably have to lead me to the thing you want to be helpful with. So I don't have a lot of knowledge when it comes to that, but I do love the water. And I do think that there is just something so centering about being on a body of water, near water. There's just something about it. And I will also say that, sailing, that weather aspect, I'm not someone who would like to test that out too far, but I think it's so cool that your family takes on this thing that also brings you a lot of joy. So I know the sailing season is coming.
And there's a lot about sailing that you can apply to nursing or to life. There's a saying that you cannot adjust the wind, but you can adjust your sails.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we're sailing what we're always doing. And we can't count on the weather, especially in Chicago, but we get out there, we do the best we can, and we do that by adjusting our sails. And I think that's important. That reminds me all the time. I think about that a lot when I can't change what's happening at work or in the world, but I can change some of the things about how I react to it or what I do to react to it. And I think that's important for all of us.
Okay, we could again, let's just let Harriet dole out some life lessons here, because that could fill up we could just go to part 2 of this podcast and just have you just drop some truth bombs like that last one, because I could not agree more. Okay, I'm gonna close it out, because again, we could just stay here. If our audience would like to follow you online, is there a social media platform or something they could reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook as Harriet S. Hawkins, and I'm on Instagram as Blizzard Hawk, all one name. Blizzard is the name of my boat. Frost is the name of my dog. Didn't name either of them. They both came with those names, but I'm Blizzard Hawk on Instagram.
Well, Harriet, we really appreciate you being on here and chatting with us today. You were, as Holly called it, giving truth bombs. And I thought about what you said about how people at the shelter where you work really often just need somebody to talk to, and being able to sit down and talk with you. I think a lot of nurses need somebody to talk to and somebody to glean information from. And you've certainly become a very well-respected nurse in the emergency medicine field. And you have a lot that you can share. And I think Holly is right on when she says we could have another podcast right after this with you giving more information like that. I just really respect you a lot. I really think that what you're doing is so valuable to so many people, not only that are recipients of the care through the education you provide, but also outside of the hospital and healthcare system alone. Just the things that you're doing are so impactful and so appreciated. And it's just such an honor to sit down and talk with you. So thank you for the time that you spent with us today. It's really appreciated.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be asked. So I'm really, really grateful to you.
Well, I want to take this time to thank Harriet for joining us for this episode of BCN and Friends. Harriet, you are an inspiration to many. It's not only the long list of accomplishments and impactful work that you've done, but how you have created this legacy of kindness, compassion, humor, and just plain class. To know you is confirmation of good people in the world doing amazing things every day. And I speak collectively for many when I say we are truly grateful for you. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned as we bring new, insightful episodes of BCN and Friends. If you have a suggestion for an episode, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us a message to bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs here with Michael Dexter, and on behalf of the entire BCN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you're doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, we are out.